$7.4 million. That's the minimum net worth required to be in the top 1% of Canadian families. According to the Parliamentary Budget Office's 2025 update, using the most recent Statistics Canada data. Not income, net worth. What you own minus what you owe. And here's the number that should stop you cold. The top 1% of Canadian families now hold 25.6% of all wealth in this country. Meanwhile, the bottom 40% of Canadians, millions of people, hold just 3% combined. Now, here's what most people assume. Those top 1% families must have started rich. They must have had advantages. They must have gotten lucky. But the data tells a completely different story. A 2025 Kiplinger analysis found that wealth at the top is typically built through a few repeatable strategies applied consistently over time. Not big wins, not risky bets, not inheritance. The gap between the top 1% and everyone else isn't built from luck. It's built from a system. A specific, learnable, repeatable system for managing money. And in this video, we're going to break down exactly what that system looks like, with real numbers, real data, and one actionable step at the end of every single segment. Before a single tactic, we need to address the most important mindset shift. Because if you skip this part, nothing else in this video will stick. Most Canadians think about money in terms of income. How much do I make? Can I afford this? What's left after bills? The top 1% think about money in terms of net worth. Not what comes in, what they keep. Not the salary, the assets. Here's the 2025 data that proves this distinction is everything. According to Statistics Canada's Q4 2025 data, the most recent available, the wealthiest households in Canada, the top 20%, hold 65.7% of the country's total net worth, averaging $3.5 million per household. The bottom 40%? They hold just 3.0%, averaging $81,650 per household. Now here's the insight that changes everything. Many of those households in the bottom 40% have decent incomes. The gap isn't built by earning more. It's built by what people do with the income they already have. The Federal Reserve's Q3 2025 data shows the top 1% of Americans held 31.7% of all U.S. household wealth, the widest concentration in 3 decades. And the primary driver isn't salary. It's ownership, assets, investments, things that grow while you sleep. The average Canadian thinks, I need to earn more to build wealth. The top 1% think, I need to own more. A salary is capped by the hours in your day. Assets are not. Your action step: calculate your net worth right now. Assets minus liabilities. Write that number down. That number, not your salary, is your actual financial scoreboard. Here is the first concrete habit, and it's the one that makes every other habit in this video possible. The top 1% pay themselves first. Not what's left over after spending, not whatever's comfortable. First, before rent, before groceries, before everything. Before any money goes to bills or subscriptions, the wealthy allocate a fixed percentage to their future selves. It's not about saving what's left. It's about making your financial future the top priority. Now here's the contrast that should make you uncomfortable. According to Statistics Canada's Q4 2025 data, the most recent available, the Canadian household savings rate fell to 4.4% in the fourth quarter of 2025. 4.4%. That means for every $100 Canadians earn, just $4.40 is being saved. High net worth households? Studies consistently show they save and invest 30 to 40% of gross income, and significantly more during peak earning years. That is not a small gap. That is a completely different financial operating system. Financial advisors and the research consensus recommend saving a minimum of 20% of gross income, with at least 15% going to long-term investments and 5% to accessible emergency savings. For a Canadian earning $80,000 per year, 20% is $16,000 annually. Here's how that maps onto Canadian registered accounts. Total, $16,000. Automated. Gone before your brain has a chance to spend it. Behavioral economists call this pre-commitment, and the research behind it is overwhelming. People who automate savings consistently save more, stress less, and build significantly more wealth than those who save what remains at the end of the month. There is never anything left at the end of the month. That's by design. Your action step: set up an automatic transfer for the day after your next paycheck. Even $200. The amount matters less than making it automatic. Here is the stat that separates the 1% from everyone else more than any other single data point. 94% of households in the top 1% own $10,000 or more in equities. Less than 5% of households in the bottom 20% do. 94% versus 5%. Same market. Same S&P 500. Same index funds. Completely different participation rates. The top 1% are not smarter stock pickers. According to S&P SPIVA data, actively managed funds underperform the index over 20 years in the vast majority of cases. The wealthy aren't beating the market. They're simply in the market, consistently, for a long time. And the math rewards that consistency in ways that feel almost unbelievable. The S&P 500 has returned approximately 10% annually on average since inception, through recessions, crashes, pandemics, and geopolitical crises. Using a conservative 8% annual return, here's what consistent monthly investing actually produces inside a Canadian TFSA. Look at the 30-year column. $1,000 a month. The cost of a modest car payment plus insurance becomes $1,490,359. Tax-free. Every dollar of that growth belongs entirely to you. And according to 2025 Kiplinger research, someone earning a moderate income who starts investing early and stays consistent for 20-plus years can build more wealth than a higher earner who delays or frequently pulls money out of the market. That's not a motivational statement. That is mathematics. But here's the critical piece. 80% of Americans say they wish they'd started investing earlier, according to a 2025 IPX1031 survey of 854 investors. The average first investment was made at age 27. Every year before 27 you start is worth dramatically more than every year after. Your action step: open a TFSA today if you haven't. Set up a monthly purchase of an S&P 500 ETF. Low cost, diversified, automatic. That's it. Start there. Here's a finding that completely reframes how the wealthy earn money. According to the First Citizens 2025 Wealth Survey of High Net Worth Americans, the most comprehensive of its kind, wealthy individuals rely on multiple income sources simultaneously. 75% depend on employment income. 89% have investment income. 45% own a business. 43% receive equity-based compensation, up from 30% the year before. 23% have inheritance income. They are not relying on a single paycheck. They are running a personal income portfolio. And according to a 2025 IPX 103, one survey of investors, 88% of Americans believe you need passive income to be financially secure in retirement. 83% believe multiple income streams are essential for long-term financial security. This isn't aspiration. It's a documented strategy. For a Canadian in their 20s or 30s, building multiple income streams doesn't happen overnight. It happens in sequence. Stream 1. Employment income. Your current primary income. Maximize it. Stream 2. Dividend income. At $50,000 in an S&P 500 ETF, a 1.5% yield generates $750 per year passively. The first stream. Stream 3. TFSA growth. Tax-free compounding is itself a form of passive return. Every dollar growing tax-free is income the government can't touch. Stream 4. Side business or freelance. 45% of wealthy households have business income. It doesn't have to be large to start. The pattern is clear. Each new stream reduces your dependence on any single one. And each stream makes the next one easier to build, because more capital generates more options. The goal isn't to replace your salary by next month. The goal is to make your financial life less vulnerable to any single point of failure. Your action step. Identify your Stream 2. What could generate income independent of your working hours? Start researching it today. Here's the rule that most financial content ignores, and it's the one that keeps wealth from disappearing. The top 1% don't just build wealth, they protect it. One of the biggest threats to long-term wealth isn't a bad investment. It's bad timing, being forced to sell good assets at the wrong moment because you have no cash buffer. Wealthy households are obsessive about liquidity precisely to avoid this. Here's the data behind the protection habits of high-net-worth Canadians. Emergency fund. High-net-worth households maintain 6 to 12 months of living expenses in liquid, accessible savings. Not invested. Not locked in a GIC. Available. This is active protection. It means that when a job loss, health event, or market crash happens, they never have to sell long-term investments at depressed prices. Eliminating bad debt. The top 1% limit, or completely avoid high-interest consumer debt. In Canada, the average credit card interest rate hovers around 20%. Paying 20% interest requires a 25% return just to break even. Consumer credit in Canada hit $816.5 billion in December 2025. An all-time record. The top 1% are not part of that number. Canadian household debt-to-income ratio. According to Statistics Canada, Canadian households carry 174.67% debt-to-income as of Q4 2025. That means for every $1 of disposable income, Canadians owe $1.74. The top 1% invert this. Their assets dramatically exceed their liabilities. Insurance as infrastructure. High-net-worth individuals treat life and disability insurance not as an expense, but as the perimeter wall around everything they've built. According to the First Citizens 2025 Wealth Survey, those working with financial advisors report dramatically lower financial stress and significantly higher preparedness for emergencies. Wealth is built on offense. It stays through defense. The top 1% play both with equal discipline. Your action step: calculate your debt-to-income ratio right now. If it's above 100%, eliminating consumer debt becomes your highest priority financial move. Here is the most underrated habit in this entire video, and the data behind it is staggering. According to the FINRA Foundation's 2025 National Financial Capability Study, the most authoritative financial literacy research available. U.S. adults answered just 49% of basic personal finance questions correctly in 2025, less than half. In Canada, the numbers are similarly alarming. The FP Canada 2026 Financial Stress Index found that Canadians who do not have a financial plan are twice as likely to experience anxiety and depression as those who do. And here's the direct consequence. 51% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck in Q4 2025, with Gen Z at 67% and millennials at 63%, according to 2025 YouGov data. The link isn't coincidence. When half the population can't correctly answer basic questions about compound interest, it shows up as high-cost credit card debt, thin emergency funds, and zero investment accounts. Now here's what the top 1% do differently. According to financial planning research published in the FPA Journal in 2025, 84% of high-net-worth individuals say they are very or somewhat interested in improving their financial skills, despite already being wealthy. They don't think they know enough. That curiosity is exactly what keeps them ahead. Studies on millionaire habits show 88% read daily to increase their job and industry knowledge. The wealthy treat financial education the way they treat investing, as a compounding asset that pays returns for the rest of their lives. What you need to understand isn't complicated. It's knowing how compound interest works and why starting at 22 versus 32 creates a $1 million gap. The difference between a TFSA, RRSP, and FHSA, and when to use each. What an MER is, and why a 2% fee versus 0.20% can cost you $300,000 over 30 years, how Canadian tax brackets work, and how registered accounts reduce your bill. Every one of those concepts is learnable in a weekend, and every one, once understood, changes every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Your action step: spend 30 minutes this week learning one concept from the list above. That's the top 1% habit, and it costs nothing. Let's come back to where we started. $7.4 million, the minimum net worth to be in Canada's top 1%. You don't need to get there to change your life. But the 6 rules that build that kind of wealth are available to anyone willing to apply them, starting with whatever you have right now. Here's what the data shows happens when you do. A Canadian who starts at 25, earns $80,000, saves 20%, $16,000 per year, and invests it in an S&P 500 ETF inside their TFSA at a conservative 8% annual return. By age 35, $249,000. By age 45, $782,000. By age 55, $1,960,000. By age 65, $4,500,000. All of it growing tax-free, none of it requiring a promotion, a side hustle, or a lucky investment. Just the 6 rules, applied consistently, over time. The top 1% in Canada hold $7.4 million or more. The top 20% average $3.5 million. The bottom 40% average $81,650. That gap is not about luck. It's not about income. According to every major source of data, statistics, Canada, the Federal Reserve, the Parliamentary Budget Office, the FINRA Foundation, it is about the habits practiced daily, consistently, over decades. The wealth gap between the top 20% and the bottom 40% in Canada reached 62.4 percentage points in Q3 2025, according to Statistics Canada. and it widened by 0.5 points in just 1 year. The gap grows every single year. And the only way to close it, for you, is to start applying the system that the other side is already using. Pay yourself first. Invest consistently. Build multiple streams. Protect what you build. Never stop learning. The system works. The data proves it. Start today.